the brother that he cheated out of the birthright and the blessing. And it became so serious that his mother, Rachel, said, Rebecca said, just get out of here. Just get out of here. Leave. Go to my brother far, far away. Go to him. So Jacob flees. He and his brother do not part on good terms. And there's a reason that Jacob flees, because, again, to refresh your memory, Esau is a huge man, a strong man, an outdoors type guy, where Jacob, not so big. Kind of stays home, helps his mom out around the house. So when Jacob hears and knows that Esau is upset, he is terrified and he runs. Any of us would run. And he runs and runs and runs. And then now comes a time where he has to come home. It's been almost 20 years, but he hasn't seen his brother. So your imagination starts to run wild if you're confronting somebody you've stolen two major things from, a blessing and a birthright. What is Esau going to be like? And it gets closer and closer and closer to that time when they have to meet. And they reach a place called the Jabbok. And the Jabbok is a tributary into the Jordan River. Jacob is coming up from the south. Esau is coming from the north. And it appears more than certain that they will meet right at this spot. So Jacob, out of a concern for his wife and his children, sends them away on the other side to be safe. In fact, Jacob is all alone by himself. I think all of us can relate to being anxious about something that's going to happen the next day. Jacob cannot sleep. And to make matters worse, there's a man. There is a man that comes out of nowhere and just starts wrestling with him. And Jacob wrestles with this man. Now Jacob, despite his small size, his life has been a life of wrestling, of holding on to people, of trying to take, of struggling with them. From the time he was born, when he was born, we're told that he was grasping the heel of his twin brother Esau. And then he struggles, he wrestles away the birthright and the blessing from the same brother. When he gets to Laban, who's the father of his wives, he wrestles with him, he struggles with him. His whole life has been a life of struggle and wrestling, and now it culminates in this very moment where he wrestles this mysterious man. Now the identity of the man is never clearly identified. And there are parts of the story that you're reading that you go, oh, this man is God. But then other parts of the story where you're saying, this man can't be God. How can he be God if he doesn't know Jacob's name? How can he be God if he can't win a wrestling match against Jacob? So just leave his identity a mystery and assume he is what the Bible says from the very beginning. A man wrestles with Jacob. But it's getting to be daybreak. And the man says, let me go, because it's almost dawn. Let me go. And Jacob says, no, not unless you give me a blessing. Now, Jacob is used to getting blessings after struggle. And this man says, well, what's your name? Now, Jacob is honest, and he says, my name is Jacob. Which, to refresh your memories, the name Jacob means the trickster, the liar. And that name has fit Jacob so well up until this point. He has tricked his brother. out of his birthright. He has tricked his father-in-law Laban. He has tricked and lied and cheated to get where he is. And the man says, no more. You will be called Israel. For you have striven, you have struggled with God and with humans and have prevailed. You're still here in your struggle. So then he goes away, but before he goes away, he strikes the hip socket and he gives to Jacob a mark, a reminder, a scar of that encounter so he might never forget it. Now Jacob, it said, I have seen God face to face and have lived to tell the story. Now, when you're wrestling, you don't necessarily see face to face with the person you're wrestling with. And I would like to say that although this man might not have been God, that does not mean that Jacob didn't encounter God in the midst of his struggle. In the midst of his struggle, he saw the face of God. In the midst of his anxiety, in the midst of his fears, God did not flee from him, but God met him where he was and gave to him what he needed. Who preserved his life, and Jacob acknowledges that. And he acknowledges that a people of God, even if we struggle with this God, even if we wrestle in our doubts and our anxieties and our fears, God stays with us and gives us the blessing of life. He doesn't leave us. And I know so many times in the midst of my own struggles, it might seem that God has left. But God doesn't leave. In the midst of the struggle, he is still there. Breathe in his breath of life that gives hope and strength and salvation, because it's in these struggles that we encounter the very face of God, the very face that we know in the midst of our struggles that we rely on, because there is no way that we can struggle and survive without knowing that God stands with us. And Jacob is given that reminder. And just in case he forgets, he's given the name that reminds him in the midst of these struggles. God is with you and you will prevail. You will survive. God will not let you go. Now let's fast forward a few 100,000 years or so to the feeding of the 5,000. The disciples are in kind of a more miniature moment of anxiety. They're 12 guys and they're hungry. Let me tell you, as a guy, if you're hungry, it is very anxiety producing. They look at what they have, 5 loaves, 2 fish. And tell Jesus, send these people away because we barely have enough for ourselves. Send them away. Send them away right now. And Jesus says, no way. We're not going to send them away. Here's what you're going to do. You are going to feed them. Notice what Jesus says. He doesn't say, I'm going to feed them. He says, no, you disciples, you are going to feed them. Now that's a horse of a different color then. But here's the thing. They start to feed them. And once they start to feed them, the food never runs out. They go on Jesus' promise, Jesus' command, Jesus who is the literal face of God. And they trust in him. In that moment of anxiety, that moment of probably how in the world are we going to feed that, like I told the kids, almost 10,000 people here. And just to underscore the point that this is a miracle that God is working as the disciples are working and handing out the food. They don't have just a little bit less than 5 loaves and 2 fish. They have 12 baskets full. They have over 12 times